Dr. Fadi Castronovo, thank you for this interview. The first question is, what got you interested in teaching?
So that's a very good question. So there's a two-part answers to this. The first one is that it kind of is a family trait. Both of my parents are high school teachers, and I was always kind of exposed to their passion, to their dedication to others, to their, kind of like life mission of helping others and especially students and being able to understand students and understand their life and what they go through and being able to support them not only through sharing of knowledge or skills, the typical things that most people think of as a teacher, but also helping them in their daily lives. My parents had, study sessions with groups of students coming over and helping them out after hours, or making sure that students that were lagging behind, they did extra sessions after school hours. So, I was really kind of exposed to that through them. Oh, and you're not recording, or you're recording just audio? Oh, okay. And then the other thing that, I actually, while I was doing my undergraduate as an engineer, um, I had the opportunity to actually participate in a summer camp, not as a student, but as a graduate assistant. So kind of like the summer camp that we did, I was the one that was coordinating the labs and coordinating the field trips and also eventually I got to teach some of the lessons too. So I got to teach the software, got to teach concepts as well, and I was really excited for that opportunity and being able to see how the students that were taking what I was saying and being empowered by that, whether it was empowered through knowledge or empowered through skills or deciding to pursue engineering, was really powerful for me. So much so that I think it was about a year and a half ago, I went to the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, SHEP, or I think that's how people pronounce it, SHEP. And I was able to connect with one of my old students that was a student of mine while I was a graduate assistant. And she was now working for Exxon as a program manager, as an engineer. And she said that experience while I was an undergrad, while I was being a teaching assistant, changed her idea, her idea of what it means to be an engineer, and especially as a Latina, it was for her. It was like, wow, I can be empowered through that. So that really, I think these, like my parents, my summer experience, and then after my master's, I actually didn't want to teach. I wanted to be a professional. I wanted to make money, but I saw that the amount of I don't want to say a fulfillment of who I am and the relationships that I was creating, that I was getting from talking, from teaching and from mentoring, really turned me back onto teaching, and that's why I went into my PhD. So. Sure.
Awesome, Fadi. So, throughout your professional and educational career, did you have any mentors?
Yes, I had definitely several mentors that really shaped the way that I thought of what it means to be not only a mentor but also a teacher. My father, I think, illustrated to me the importance of personal connection with students, and making sure that you create a professional boundary, but at the same time understanding that you also have to be a human being working with human beings, and that being having that emotional intelligence is also really important. My mother, I think, is definitely another big mentor, as she is very creative in ways to make sure that students learn. She, because we lived in the Bronx, and we definitely had an exposure to the more than typical people that don't live in these urban areas, to a very diverse group of people. She would get very creative to engage students. And it might seem silly and maybe a little bit cultural appropriation, but she would try to get students to learn about biology through creating raps and rapping and songs, and so really engaging them in every possible way that that the students can be engaged in. So being creative in the way that you teach, don't just sit down and talk. So um, and it's hilarious if you ever see my mom rapping. It's just it's terrible. It's terrible. I would hide every time. But professionally speaking, I also had my PhD advisor was amazing. Both my engineering and educational psychology advisor. My engineering advisor was really good because he illustrated to me the importance of connections with others, professionally speaking, of being humble in those connections, but also knowing that you know things. So it's important that you understand that you know things, and own the knowledge that you have. And then my educational professor really taught me everything that there is about, from a theoretical perspective, about education, what it means to truly learn. And they were both, I think, equally important on that.
Awesome, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Fadi. Moving on to question number three. Do you mentor students, and is that valued in your
Um,
department?
I will answer the valued in your department through my new department, not my current department, because if in case anything of this ever goes out, I definitely don't want them to find out. But yes, I do mentor a lot of students, a lot of students. I mentor them in ranging from from knowledge, instilling knowledge. If students want to do research and learn about the research process, or the construction world, I'm always open for office hours, but also I still meet with students that have graduated and still give them advice. I mentored students in attending conferences and getting them to go, even without me, to go and present so that they can actually experience what it feels like to be at a conference. So empowering students and not just teaching them knowledge, but also empowering them to go out of their comfort zone. I mentor students to getting jobs in the professional world as well. I meet regularly with students needing advice on how to create their resumes, how to interview. Just like a few weeks ago, a student of mine messaged me asking me to have a phone call because he was about to have an interview. Um, but also connecting them with companies. Whenever there's a company that tells me, hey, we're looking for somebody, do you have any suggestions? I can connect that student and then tell them how to approach that company, how to talk to a company, how to structure the interview. Um, that's another way. And then in personal ways, I had students with whom I've flown to Panama, and created a very strong bond with, and I still talk to them. And I've learned even more about different types of religions. There's a student that I have a strong connection with who's Muslim, and he's taught me a lot about the Muslim faith, and I just creating that personal rapport. And the latest report that I think goes beyond just the regular teacher mentoring, but also life mentoring. I have a student who's fighting leukemia right now and still attending class, and I talk to him every week, and I support him. He says that I'm part of his support system, which is an honor as a professor and as a teacher to be part of that. So I think that's something that, to me, if I wasn't able to do that, or if I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't be doing my job right. And I think that mentoring, and in my department at University of Brighton, they call it pastoral work, as in you're a pastor. Um, so they call it pastoral work, which I think it's really important, and they really value that. They really want for faculty to go beyond the professional aspect, and support students in both professional and understanding how students go through. Um, yeah, I have so many other stories of students that gone through hardships, but and I try to support them as much as possible. But we have limited time, so I want to get through all your answers, and then if anything, I'll come back.
So, what changes have you noticed in your students in your classes that may be different from those in classes when you first started teaching?
In your students that might be different from those classes when you first. So, is it differences in the students, or is differences in the teaching? Answer both. Well, I mean, so from when I started teaching, which was back in, I want to say 2010, 2011, so almost 10 years ago, was when I first had my first teaching experience. Students were more adaptable or more prone to learning through traditional methods, like read a book, read this, here's a lecture, I'm going to read to you, or I'm going to explain to you things, or I'm going to go through a problem, and you're just going to pay attention, right? And I feel that it's not that the students had stronger ability to be attentive or have like attention to that, but I do think that in general, because of the way that internet, that the way that we connect with one another, with all of this, I think that it has changed because students want the answers faster, and a lot of things they can find out themselves, and they're capable of doing that research themselves. When I was a student, or when I first started teaching, you might have had to go find things in a book. You might have to go look at the encyclopedia or the dictionary or newspapers. Now you have at your fingertip databases of research articles, databases of newspapers, of knowledge, Wikipedia, which it's not necessarily the best source, but it's a starter. It has changed, and so you have to change also the mode in which you teach. And so I find myself to be much more almost of a facilitator of learning than a teacher, because I need to develop activities and experiences where the students need to find out the knowledge, where they need to experience the knowledge and gain that knowledge. Now, this is definitely discipline specific, because construction it's very discipline specific. I don't think this is true for people doing biology or studying medicine. They still need to crack open that book and learn things. And so do engineers, but I think that you need to be very streamlined and very conscious and very direct in the way that you're teaching, so that you are not you got to trim out the fat, basically, and you really got to get to the core thing that you want the students to learn, because we don't have that much time in the classroom. They might not have as much time outside, partly either because of work, whether they're working in a profession or they're working 2 to 3 jobs, and I had several students that had go through this. They're homeless and they don't have the ability to connect to the internet. So really, that class time has to be extremely powerful for them to get that, that knowledge. And so I think that has changed quite a lot the way that I teach from even 4 years ago when I first started teaching, and I didn't know too much about the hardships that, especially in the Bay Area or students that are coming from fairly urban areas, deal with. So, yeah,
That's awesome,
sure.
Fadi. Question 5. Is your identity manifested in your teachings?
I think it has to be because then you're not you're not you're not there. I mean, if I wasn't manifesting my own personality, my own way of learning as well, and I'm also a very experiential learner, learning by doing. I'm gonna try and fail, and then try and fail, and try and fail um, until I learn. I think that if I wasn't doing that, I think I wouldn't be true to myself, and I would be trying to fit into a box that is not myself. And I think that the students see that I am very deliberate because I'm very deliberate in what I teach and how I teach, and I'm very authentic in the way that I teach, and I care, and I'm very open if I don't care about something, or if I think something shouldn't be, that is not as important. um, and also, I'm very sometimes sarcastic, and I'm very uh, I grew up in the Bronx, and so I'm a very no not nonsense kind of person, and so I will tell you as it is. If you're telling, if a student comes up to me and they're like trying to wiggle their way out of like getting a grade, or making up excuses, I'm very the type of person of, don't waste my time. If you want to learn, or if something is happening, just be straight with me, right? I rather you just being straight with me, and I'm straight with students. And I also, try to, joke around with students too, so that they see that I'm not this person that is up in this ivory tower, but I'm in there with them in the trenches, understanding how they can learn the best. So, yeah, definitely, it's my identity is extremely, and that can be hard sometimes too, because if a student in my evaluations says, "Oh, you can be you can be off-putting, or you can be too sarcastic," and I'm like, oh yeah, well, that's true, and I try to check that, and I try to explain to the students that it's not personal, it's the way I am. It's and but yeah, it by expressing who you are putting yourself out there, and if students criticize you, it feels very personal, and so it can be challenging. So.
Okay, Fadi. So, next question. How do you address student retention?
Um, I think that it's I don't have there's a ton of research out there. I think that the best way that I approach it is by having having a classroom space that is valuable in time. That the time that they're in the class is a valuable time for them to be there. That they are activated and engaged. Um, and I think that if they are not activated, if they're not attracted to what I'm teaching, if they're not engaged, if they are not developing a strong knowledge and self efficacy, meaning their own belief about their own knowledge. Um, if I don't develop that in them, then that's challenging. And so what I try to do very hard is to try to develop that self-efficacy, that identity, that knowledge, those skill sets, obviously, because if they don't have skills, they could believe that they can go to the moon, but if they can't go to the moon, they can't, right? So, right. So that skill set is those things are very important. Um, and so I design my classroom uh, to be that, to be very focused on developing that identity, developing the skill sets, by being engaged, by being activated. In addition to that, I also adopt a continuous improvement model of assessment. And so I want the students to fail, but then learn and then improve. And so, I don't design in the one shot off like project, right? I want them to build on that project throughout the entire semester, and I give them a lot of feedback throughout the semester. That's a lot of work for me, but you see that the students gain more. Their grades improve. And if you check from the moment that I started teaching certain classes and from previous years, because the CSU dashboard allows you see my retention rate has increased quite a lot. I maybe in 4 years I've only had to fail 2 students, and that's because they actively failed, not because I wanted them to fail. In addition to that, I also think that that knowing the students that you're working with, whether or the population that you're working with, so underrepresented minorities, students coming from less resourced areas. They don't have as much time because they might be working 2 to 3 jobs. They might be, I have students that right now, even online, they are listening to my class while being a Amazon delivery person. And so I record all my classes. I make sure that they can go back to it. And even when we were still in person, I understood if somebody had a specific situation that I needed to support them through, and then I will make sure that I will try hard for them to learn and still be assessed in a way that is still going to maintain them to be a professional in the future. So understanding those challenges that the students coming from URMs, from low income, I think it's really important. And so that's how I tackle retention. I had one student that he made a bad life choice, and he disappeared for about a month and a half, and he was in jail. He came back, and I obviously at first was like, well, why are you here? Get out of here, right? But obviously that mentality of understanding the other person, which my father really taught me, and my mother as well. I asked him, okay, what happened? And he was like, I was in a situation where I had no access to phones. I was in a situation where I made a bad choice and I had to pay the consequences. And so I worked with him. He passed, obviously not with a good grade, because it wouldn't be fair, but I gave him the chance, right? I had a student who came up to me and said, I will not be able to have a laptop for the next month and a half. And I'm like, what happened? Her ex-husband was had been arrested by the FBI on charges of murder, and the laptop, which was being used by both her and her ex-husband, had been taken for as evidence. And so I worked with the library and got her a different laptop so that she could continue doing work. So I think that's understanding retention is really important. And by understanding who the students are and how you can support them through that, because if you don't, then you're just there as a gatekeeper and making sure that people get kicked out, and not as somebody that is an educator and wants them to excel.
Awesome,
Yeah.
Fadi. Thank you. I'm gonna jump to the last question, and if we have time, maybe we can do one more. What are ways student affairs can partner with faculty?
I don't know what student affairs are. I think so. If I understand correctly, it's like those services that can support students in either health or basic needs, or registering, or maybe I don't have no idea.
Right. Some like student support program like TRIO, ELPS, may.
Oh, I see. Yes. Um, I think that it's not the student affairs job to engage the faculty. Sorry. let me rephrase that. Student affairs should partner with faculty and should engage with the faculty, but it is not their prerogative, or how can I put it? I think it has to come up from presidential or deans, or it has to be mandated, because I know of faculty that we have tons of resources at Cal State or at Brighton that we can engage in. However, it's not, if the faculty is not rewarded, if the faculty is not mandated to attend, they're not going to do it. As every human being, that if they're not rewarded or if they're not mandated to do something, they're not going to do it. Unless they have, that kind of calling, that kind of mentorship that they have had in the past, that makes them understand this is how you can engage with student affairs. So I joked around when I said, what do you mean by student affairs? And the reason why I said, what are student affairs? Because there's so many different types of student support that are existing right there. We definitely have programs like summer programs like MESA, the VRES that we did, and all of those. But then there's also, there is, I think at Cal State East Bay is called Pioneers for Hope, and it's supporting students dealing with basic needs, whether it's food or shelter or housing. And so, they have pantries. My wife used to work for the Basic Needs Committee at Berkeley. And so, I think that they need to engage with faculty. They need to educate the faculty on where those resources are, so that when they do have a student that is coming and is sharing any hardship or needs to be supported, they can point them in the right direction. I had students that were homeless and I pointed them in the right direction. I had students that were suffering from mental health issues and I pointed them to the healthcare center on campus. That I had students that, as I told you, didn't have the right materials or the right hardware, and I pointed them in the right direction. But that's because I try to engage with those and I try to learn, and it's kind of like a family trade, a family training. But I know faculty that will not either, some will not care because they're say that's not my part of my description, my job description, and some just don't know or haven't been educated in that. And so I think that while student affairs can partner with faculty and can support them, I think that it has to be mandated and it has to be a training that everybody needs to receive. And it cannot be let go online and do this like Title IX or Clergy Act kind of like training that, if you're tech savvy enough, you just copy and paste everything, and then when it's the quiz, you just search the answer. Not to say that I did that. But I think that, it has to be a personal experience that the faculty needs to have in order to really have that connection. And just like the way I teach, has to be experiential. It has to be a connection. Has to be something that really connects with the students or the faculty. So yeah.
Awesome, Fadi. We're running a little over time, so with that, thank you so much.
I can have a couple more times, but if you have to run, I'll let you go. I can spare another 5-10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Okay.
So, interestingly enough, I'm actually gonna forward you a video. It's this professor. He actually taught VR. His last name is Pausch. He unfortunately passed away from pancreatic cancer, but he was so amazing.
Oh, is it the last lecture?
Yes.
Yes, I've seen the last lecture.
He reminds me so much of you, Fadi.
Thank
like
you.
everything, like his personality, his easiness, his just how just how you could be like so funny and engaging. I was like, oh my god, and that's why I was like, so that was actually part of one of the assignments to go through that video and then interview faculty. And then just when I was looking through a video, I was like, oh my god, this reminds me so much of Fadi.
That's awesome. That feels honestly like a huge compliment. I'll be honest, I saw that last lecture maybe maybe 8 years ago, and I wasn't even thinking about teaching, and it made me think of my father and of my parents. So it's a true compliment. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. So, question number 7. Thinking about several years from now, how do you envision your last lecture? What would be something you would emphasize in your last lecture?
Oh, I don't know. Oh my God, it's such a putting me on the spot, because then you're like double guessing everything. It's like, how can I say the most impactful thing ever? I think that one thing that I always tell the students is, don't worry about the grades, right? Obviously, if you have a professor and then if you really care, sure. Worry about gaining knowledge, skills that will help you live this life. Whether it is living your professional life, or whether living your personal life, focus on those. And if you focus on those, if you have that mission, that core mission that really leads you into making the choices that really matter, whether they're professional or personal, if you focus on that mission of, I care about achieving, a healthy life, or I achieve in making an impact on others, grades don't matter, right? Because if you stay true to that mission, you'll have some bad grades, you'll have some good grades. I'll say I almost failed calculus 2 the first time around, and that's okay. And I was really scared, I was really nervous, obviously. But if I could give myself an advice to when I was a student, right, that would be it. It's like, yes, work hard. That's number one. You definitely gotta work hard. That's not, you can't just like, oh, if this doesn't fit my mission, I don't care. No, trust me, you'll have to do a lot of stuff that you don't care about, but will help you build towards that mission, right? I mean, I had to take so many English classes, so many humanities classes, and I don't want to be an English major. Why am I taking that? But it helped me achieve my degree, which helped me in my mission, right? And I would say that my mission is, really making an impact on others. And I think that if you create that mission, that core mission, that is serving yourself and serving others, that would be the main focus of my last lecture, the main advice that I would give to others, that those things don't matter. Those grades, that letter A or B plus, or that quiz where I gave you -2 points, don't worry about that. Worry about, okay, is that something that I really want to learn more, or is that something that I should it's okay, that will go later. And focus on learning those things that then can empower you to drive that mission, right? And by serving others and yourself, that should also include, and this is something that is true for me, serving also in the environment as well, serving the planet. And because as soon as you start thinking about having that mission of helping others, helping yourself, as soon as you start doing that, you also start thinking outside of yourself, and also outside of the immediate relationships that you have, and you're helping the nature, animals, all of those things too. So that's something that I think I would say, that develop a mission that empowers you and supports others. And I think that I think is the most important thing, because if no matter what, you're going to have bad days at work, you're going to have some good days at work. And that is not to say that you should be, working in somewhere that makes you miserable. If your mission is to support you, or to empower yourself and support others, find that job, find that life, find that person, whether it is a male, a female, or whatever, or however you identify yourself, find that, surround yourself with those people that will empower you to do that. And those people that don't support you in doing that, I don't want to say don't waste your time, because those experiences can help you learn, but take that negativity as a chance to learn. And so, I had heartbreaks, I had terrible bosses, I had terrible friends. And all those are great experiences and possibilities for me to learn who I am, and then who I don't want to be, and who I don't want to be close to. And that's fine. So, take those failures, take those successes, have a mission that drives you. And I think that would be something that I would try to gain, and kind of share more of a life story as my last lecture than having a concept. I think that would be the most important thing for me.
Awesome, Fadi. Last question. How would you like to be remembered by students, and what are you doing to make that happen?
I want my students to remember me as the best professor that they had, in whichever way that is, whether it is I've learned the most, I've had the best relationship, he was easygoing, he was tough on me, but I learned. And I want them to be able to always come back to me for any questions. And I have tons of students that still connect with me 4 years down the line, 3 years down the line. That student that, I met a chef, she remembered me, and she remembered the impact that experience that I provided had. So that's the thing. I want them to gain those experiences. I want them to remember that knowledge that they gained, and that connection that I created with them. So I think that's really important for me.
Awesome, Fadi. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciated it.
Of course. No, it's a pleasure. It's always good to also kind of remind myself of why I'm doing this, because trust me, you get into moments where you're just like, why am I even doing this? And to be honest, the students I've had very few moments where I was like, these students don't care or are terrible. It's mainly the bureaucracy, it's the administrative stuff, it's the grown-ups, if you want to call them. They are the more challenging people to deal with. The students, if you connect with them, they are the most rewarding part of this. And going through this all helps me. And so if you can send it to me so I can rewatch it when I'm down in the dumps and I'm like, why am I even bothering? This is really helpful. So I appreciate this. Yeah.